Just before the congressional recess, Mike, there was a session in the House where they rejected a immigration bill, immigration reform bill, and in the last hours, people like Representative Louis Gohmert from Texas came up with a substitute bill that was passed that evening before they went home that challenges DACA and other provisions of the Gang of Eights bill in the Senate. It seems like they were taking a pretty firm stand in the House. Do you expect that this will change some minds in the Senate, and that we can see a bill with some teeth in it coming out of Congress?
Well, I would like to believe that this would happen. But, you know, the Congress really needs to know and should have known just how dangerous this program is that they're doing. DACA, the Deferred Action Program for Children. And by the way, isn't it interesting that we talked about DACA and we also talked about definitions and the word alien? Do you know that the A in the DREAM Act is for alien minors? It's remarkable how when suddenly we link the American dream, which no longer seems to apply to Americans, to illegal aliens, suddenly the word alien became acceptable. And, you know, it's interesting because I wrote an article for Fox News Latino 2 days after President Obama, back on, I believe it was June 15th, 2012, went to the Rose Garden and talked about, well, Congress failed to act, so we're going to act. Voting no is not a failure to act. A parent who tells the errant child, no, you can't go to the movies till you do your homework, is not a parent not doing his job. When members of Congress vote down bad legislation, the work they're doing is no less significant than a member of Congress voting for good legislation, hopefully. It's about discretion. This is part of what the checks and balance of our form of government is under our Constitution. But this idea of rewarding aliens who violated the laws that are supposed to protect us and providing them with whatever it was that drove them across our borders and somehow trying to make it palatable and reasonable is insane. You know, I just want to read two quotes, and this is very important. This is from the 9/11 Commission staff report on terrorist travel. And this should be hung on the walls of Congress and have every member of Congress sign off on it, kind of like, didn't you get the memo? So here's the memo. This is on page 47 of the 9/11 Commission staff report on terrorist travel. This document was prepared by the special agents of the FBI and immigration and others who worked with the 9/11 Commission and the attorneys who worked with the 9/11 Commission. They recognized that the Commission did a lot to talk about immigration. They felt they didn't go far enough, so they wrote a separate report that's hundreds of pages long. It's free online, my favorite price. It's called the 9/11 Commission staff report on terrorist travel, a monograph. Page 47. Once terrorists had entered the United States, their next challenge was to find a way to remain here. Their primary method was immigration fraud. For example, Yusuf and Ajaj concocted bogus political asylum stories when they arrived in the United States. Mahmoud Abu Alima, involved in both the World Trade Center and landmark plots, received temporary residence under the Seasonal Agriculture Worker Program after falsely claiming that he had picked beans in Florida. And then we get to page 98, and this is really as crystal clear as it could possibly be. Once terrorists had entered the United States, their next challenge was to find a way to remain here. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Let me go back. This is page 98. Terrorists in the 1990s, as well as the September 11th hijackers, needed to find a way to stay in or embed themselves in the United States if their operational plans were to come to fruition. As already discussed, this could be accomplished legally by marrying an American citizen, achieving temporary worker status, or applying for asylum after entering. In many cases, the act of filing for an immigration benefit sufficed to permit the alien to remain in the country until the petition was adjudicated. Terrorists were free to conduct surveillance, coordinate operations, obtain and receive funding, go to school and learn English, make contacts in the United States, acquire necessary materials, and execute an attack. How anybody from either party could turn around and say that we should be giving out immigration benefits with no possibility of any integrity to the system really is willing to undermine our national security. And in my commentary that I wrote for Fox News Latino, I said that what the president called prosecutorial discretion more accurately should be called prosecutorial deception.
Thank you, Mike. And I think some of your remarks are underlined by the fact that a lot of what we're seeing right now on the border is all being done in secret. I mean, there are congressmen that cannot even go and find out where some of these people crossing the border are being held, what kind of gangs they belong to, what kind of criminal backgrounds they have as children, what countries they're coming from. This is not like what we have seen in the past of illegal immigration in this country, where it has just been people coming from Mexico. This is people from all over the world that are seem to be taking advantage of the porousness, the deliberate porousness of our border.
Well, we've always had a problem with people coming here from the four corners of the planet. I was with the INS for 30 years, starting in October 1971 in the horse and buggy era. I started as an immigration inspector at Kennedy International Airport in October 1971, became an agent in 1976. I've testified before a whole bunch of congressional hearings about the issues. And many of the people that I arrested during my career or investigated came from around the world. It's a false notion, by the way, to think it's only about Mexico. And I find it infuriating when we hear about the so-called Latino vote, and I think we should just quickly touch on that. This notion that anybody whose last name sounds Hispanic means that that's all we need to know about somebody. It's an insidious form of profiling, and it's unfair. People are people are people. And the damage being done by a lack of control over our borders has the heaviest impact in terms of crimes involving violence and so forth in immigrant communities across the spectrum, whether it's the Russian mob, whether it's Asian organized crime, the Jamaican drug posses. I spent half my career with the Drug Task Force. The damage being done is being done most heavily to immigrant communities, which is why it's nuts to say that this is anti-immigrant to want the laws enforced. And if you want to know how secure our borders are, the best metric aren't those deceptive arrest numbers that the administration is bandying around. It's the availability and price of heroin and cocaine. We are in the midst of the worst heroin epidemic, arguably in the history of the United States, to the extent where police departments around the country, including New York, are giving many of their members the antidote to heroin overdoses. The money is not only being drained out of our economy, but is enriching the coffers of drug cartels and terrorist organizations. And to your point about the way that the truth is being kept from us, this is unprecedented. For an administration that came into power promising transparency, they're being about as transparent as lead-lined bricks. And one of the other effects that this massive influx of aliens has had is to push back the immigration calendars in the immigration courts, so that aliens who are already facing deportation hearings have been basically given a stay of deportation while these new arrivals are being bumped to the head of the line. And again, this endangers national security and public safety. And if you'll know, the president has actually talked about releasing criminal aliens. And there's a real problem getting information about who these aliens are, where they're being released. My fear is that they're concealing the information, knowing full well that there will be more victims, and it'll make it difficult for people to come back and blame the federal government for future homicides, rapes, and other crimes of violence.
Thank you very much, Mike. I think we're running out of time, but I would like to tell people out there that Mike will be coming to our convention in January in Myrtle Beach. And one of the great things about our conventions is that most of, if not all, of our speakers usually spend the entire weekend. And it's a great opportunity for patriots and inquisitive minds to come and meet the people that really know what's going on behind the scenes in America today. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. And by the way, please go to my website, michaelcutler.net. I write for capsweb.org and also Front Page Magazine, the David Horowitz Freedom Center's publication. I look forward to joining all of you in January. See you then.
Thanks, Mike.